Welcome to our second episode of Film Reels, where I'm going to be interviewing local director Michael Neelsen of Last Day at Lambeau. You also may be wondering, what happened to that luxurious head of hair I had earlier without a beard? Well, we're going to be just jumping right into the interview here with Michael Neelsen. Coming at ya! We're joined here today with awesome guy Michael Neelsen. How you doing today, Michael?
I'm spectacular. How are you?
I am excellent. No complaints here.
Splendid.
Awesome. So let's start off the interview. Where did you grow up?
I grew up mainly in Wisconsin. I was born in Milwaukee, and I was raised initially in Rockford, Illinois, and then Madison, Wisconsin. So I was in Madison through the end of high school. So pretty much from the end of 5th grade to the end of high school for Madison. But before then, it was Rockford, Illinois. So.
Rockford, Illinois. Nice.
Indeed.
So any awesome stories growing up? Just
awesome stories.
Yeah, let's start off. What was your biggest influences in, say, like film or something like that? Growing up.
Well, growing up, it was more. It was the spectacle. So I was very into big Hollywood epics and things of that nature.
It was so shiny back then.
Right. And just it was much more about what you could accomplish in terms of just the large canvas aspect of movies, but. So the flashier the better in many ways. I was a big fan of Michael Bay, and I was a big fan of, Gladiator and Braveheart and a bunch of these just big kind of like,
yeah.
The bigger the better. And so that was a big influence early on in terms of making me want to make movies. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's obviously you evolve over time. So.
Yeah. So then you started, when you got older, you started working in movie theaters. What movie theaters have you worked in?
I worked at a lot. I got my first movie theater job when I was 14 at the Marcus Point Cinema on the west side of Madison. Uh-huh. Worked there through the end of high school. And then after that, I went to film school in Los Angeles, came back, and was working in video production for a period of time, and then was one of the managers when they opened up the new Sundance Cinema at the time in Madison. And after that, I went to the Westgate Art Cinema, which was also a Marcus here in town. And I've lived the last 4 years in Austin, Texas, and I was managing an art cinema down there as well. So I've worked at like 4 different theaters. Yeah.
Nice.
So
that's my track record too.
Yeah.
4 different
There you go.
theaters.
There you go.
So so you said you went to film school out in L.A. How was that?
Great. It's in the age-old debate of is film school worth the money or whatever. For me it was.
That's good.
Yeah, but really I only learned, that's not true. I was going to say I only learned 2 things, but the two things that I learned that were the biggest and most worth the money to me were, one, that I'm not a fan of Los Angeles and that I don't want to live there. My acting instructor in Austin said it best. He always said that Los Angeles is a place designed to make you forget why you went there in the first place, which is very true. But number 2 is how easy it is really to make a movie when you have the right people and the right resources around you.
Makes sense.
And that's a big epiphany when you're that age, because it can seem very much like some, incredible Everest you have to climb, and it can be, sure, but it's easier than one would think, or at least than I thought.
Yeah.
So that was it. Film school. Some people do great stuff not going to film school, and but it's kind of to each his own, I guess. For me, it was worth it.
Yeah. All right. So you moved from Wisconsin down to Texas, and that was around the time that you said you came up with the idea to do Last Day at Lambeau.
Yeah, about 2 years into Texas, I did. I'd always wanted to do a movie about the Green Bay Packers, just being a big Packers fan. But I didn't really know what capacity, and I thought maybe one day I'd be able to do something with NFL films or something like that, and I'd do like a highlight reel for the Packers, and one of their end of the season things or something, and that would probably quelch it. But what ended up happening was in August of 2010. There was a publication that came out called the Maple Street Press Packers Annual.
Yeah.
It's out of print now, but it had an article in it called Still Casting a Shadow, which was all about the idea that Brett Favre was still the #1 Packers-related topic 2 years after leaving the team, and what a weird phenomenon that was, and kind of recounted the whole thing. And I read it, and for the first time, it kind of put the story in frame for me, and I knew what story I was telling. So I called Mike Johnson, who was the author who wrote it. Originally was just going to interview him in the film, but then ended up bringing him on as co-writer, which was a great decision because he brought a ton of knowledge to the story, and a great perspective as a journalist. So, and then we were shooting 2 months later. So I mean, it was kind of a thing where it came together very quickly.
Yeah. So what the company that you and your dad established was Story First Media?
Yeah.
So what did they do?
Well, on a day-to-day basis, it's a branded storytelling video agency. So we're not a video production company,
Okay.
but the final product we put out in the world is video and short branded films. But really what we specialize in is the storytelling. So, about 80% of the actual time we spend producing something is spent up front crafting the story. And the last 20% is actually like, okay, now cameras roll. And so it's a different thing than a lot of places. A lot of video production companies will go into a place and lead with, okay, do you want it in HD? Do you want it in SD? Do you want it in kind of the tools? Leading with how many minutes do you want it to be? How many whatever? Like these very hard and fast video things, and that's not what we lead with. We lead more with, okay, what is your goal? Why do you even want video? What is and what do you hope to achieve outside of video? And once we get those ideas, then we can kind of isolate the character, the stakes, the universal values, and the dramatic choices that create a story that affects and engages brands' audiences much more than just like throwing benefits and features at them. So
nice. Where can we go to find more information about this production company?
Storyfirstmedia.com. Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Check it out. So you also do a podcast, which is one of the things that influenced me to do a podcast at one time.
Good.
So tell us a little more about Real Fanatics.
Real Fanatics. It's myself, Joe Putis, and Jared Goras, who are two long-term friends of mine. Joe and I have been roommates for and we're not now, but we were roommates for 6 years.
Okay.
And the three of us, Jared's been living in San Francisco for years, but the three of us we're kind of a trio in terms of just like film buddies. Mm-hmm. All film fans kind of have their group, Yeah. And so we would always call each other after seeing the same movie and stuff like that. And so we realized, okay, we're already spending hours and hours and hours talking about film. So why don't we make something productive out of it?
Yeah.
So now basically what we do is we just record our normal conversations, and we impose some very limited but significant constraints, like in terms of time and whatnot. But it's really just, when you're listening to it as a film fan, you should feel like you're listening to just buddies talking about movies, because that's what it is.
Yeah. And where can we find that?
Realfanatics.com. Yes.
Awesome.
That also, and we're on iTunes, and we're also on Stitcher Radio. So
sweet.
Yeah.
What does the future hold? Where are you going from here? What are you doing?
Hopefully a long, prosperous career in film, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. There's a lot of branded work that we're doing right now for Story First, but we're also in early development on a short film that we're going to put in festivals in 2014. And then there's also a feature documentary I've been developing, and narrative features as well. So there's a lot of stuff on the docket.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of web redesigning right now and things of that nature. So very busy, but very good. And the future certainly looks bright. So
I like it. Okay, so now we're narrowed down. What's your favorite film of all time?
Favorite film of all
pressure.
time? Yeah, right. Well, I can say this. I think perhaps the most flawless film of all time, and I'd probably disagree with this tomorrow, but perhaps the most flawless film of all time is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's my favorite. My favorites probably are films that are more like me. They're more The Big Lebowski. They're more High Fidelity. They're more Jackie Brown, Clerks. There's kind of a, I don't know. Favorite. I like a film that makes me think,
mm-hmm.
that gives me something a little bit more than just the surface level. and that in some way I look at that and go, that's true. That's either through its irony or its capturing something very intangible that you couldn't express just with like saying it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Okay, we both worked in movie theaters before. What's your weirdest theater story?
Weirdest theater story.
We all have one.
Well, outside of like finding condoms in the parking
Yeah,
lots and stuff,
like you know that was normal stuff. That's
yeah, right. That was normal stuff. Weirdest.
Yeah.
Well, what's your weirdest? Do you have one?
Yeah. Well, I actually have one that is almost kind of like a Rube Goldberg kind of story to it. We had a soda machine that had root beer, and it was leaking pure syrup out of it, so the thing was sticking.
Right.
So this one guy got this bright idea that he was going to fix it. So he was going to swap it out with one of the other soda towers that we rarely ever use. And the thing was, he's done it once before, but there were some controlled settings for when he did it before, like the building was closed, we weren't operating at the time. So he went to remove the thing, and he heard a popping sound, and water started spraying out into the lobby, straight up into the ceiling, and straight back into the popcorn bin.
Wow.
So at the time, the employee that was behind the counter with him was new, so they didn't know what to do, like how they were supposed to react, or what buttons do you go back behind the scenes and turn off.
Yeah.
So they were completely lost. So he's like, "Don't worry about hitting a button, just get me a bucket." So they get a bucket, and he's somehow trying to cover it, and like he loses his footing and falls after it's like somewhat full. It spills over the counter display, and water leaks down into the display case, and it's ruining all the candy inside.
Right.
It also goes over a terminal and shorts it out. And then a customer came out at this point with a popcorn bag, and it was just like, "I'll come back later," and leaves again. Finally, the manager came down and saw it, and he hit the proper switches. We had to throw out the entire bin of popcorn. We had to throw out all the candy in the case. We were now one terminal short that we could use now. And the popping sound we heard was the compressor. It had like popped open, and that was what was letting the water spray everywhere.
Wow.
But here's the cherry on top of this story, because someone said to him like, "Oh, we got this all on film with our security camera." So he went in and like rewound the tape and started recording over it. So then he's trying to mop up all the water that was underneath the terminal. Yeah. This is the cherry on top. The terminal shorted out again and popped open the drawer and just smacked him right in the forehead. Oh, so that to me was like the most excellent story
that is Rube Goldberg.
Yeah. It's just like the sequence of events that just built up. Yeah. And
that's way better than anything I got. That's yeah. My stuff is pedestrian compared to that.
But yeah, that was just a fun and great time. I love working in movie theaters.
Sure.
And over the years, do you have any things that you recommend to people? Like was working in movie theaters kind of like a benefit or a precursor to you going off and becoming more of a film person?
Well, I mean, I chose working at a movie. I think that's more of like that selection thing. Like, you know, because I'm interested in films, I chose to work at a movie theater. Yeah. Working at a movie theater didn't make me interested in films, but working at a movie theater was great. I mean, when you're interested in films, there's nothing better than being able to cut out of your budget ticket prices. That's a huge thing. You know, if you're going to movies all the time, if they're free, it helps hugely. But yeah, it is good to. It is genuinely a part of the business. So you have experience with the exhibition side. You know, exhibitors. They are an integral part of the whole process. So if you have experience there, you can better relate to them on that level later on. Totally. And what they need. You know, I mean, going around the country with film festivals with Last Day at Lambeau, just different theaters. I felt I was in a better position to kind of help them get what they needed and make it smoothly for the exhibitors.
Very true.
That's kind of the idea.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining us here today, Michael. This has been another exciting edition of Film Reels. I'm Justin Schober, and my guest, Michael Neelsen. Check out Story First Media, and we'll be around. In his film, Last Day at Lambeau. Did I say it? That was like way off now. I apologize. This is embarrassing now.